Hi, I'm Ann Bocock, and welcome to Between the Covers. I think there are two things that my guest is very fond of. One is Paris, and that makes sense, and the other is murder.
Yep.
She's now up to book number 15 in her series. Each book takes place in Paris, in a different neighborhood. The latest is Murder on the Champs de Mars, and it is my pleasure to welcome New York Times best-selling author, Cara Black.
Thank you.
I have to get this straight, and I made some notes about this. You worked as a barista in Switzerland. You taught English in Japan. You studied Buddhism in Italy. You studied Chinese history in Tokyo. You worked as a bar girl in Bangkok.
Yes.
Pouring drinks.
Pouring drinks
Pouring drinks only.
only.
You were a director of a preschool, and you worked with the Head Start program in San Francisco, which is where you live today. So combine all of that, you've got some stories.
I do, I really do. And it wasn't until my son got into preschool, he's now 26 years old, that I could start to, write about things. My husband said, he's in preschool, you've got, 2 hours a week, all that free time. So now you can start
all that
writing.
free time, but become an author.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, in doing my homework before meeting you, I did something that I don't really think I've ever done before. I always read the latest book, but I went back and I reread the first book, which was Murder in the Marais. Yeah. And to be honest, I had two reasons. One, obviously it did refresh my memory, but it was because of the events recently that happened, the terrorist attack in the Marais in Paris, that I read it. Knowing this area as well as you do, what was that like for you?
Well, when I started to write it, it was in the early 1990s. But, as we see what happened with the events in Charlie Hebdo and the anti-Semitism, it's been there a long time. And, it was always under the surface. But for me, it was really about my friend's mother. I met her in San Francisco. She was from Paris. And she invited me to come to Paris. I went to visit her. And this was in 1984. And she took me to the Marais, which at the time was not gentrified. As many of you know, it's very, very different now. And she showed me an apartment building on the Rue de Rosier, and she pointed to a window and said, this is where my mother lived during the German occupation. She was 14 years old, and she came home from school one day, and her parents were gone in 1942.
Well, hearing that, what did that do to you?
Oh, it just touched my heart. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I grew up in California with, everything was there. I never had to worry about coming home from school and finding an empty apartment. She lived there for 2 years under the grace of the concierge who fed her, thinking that her parents would come back, and they didn't know then what we now know. So they never did come back. And it was years later in 1993 when my son was with me that we went to the Marais again, and I had put him to bed, because I could, he's now taller than I am, and I walked down the Rue de Rosier. I think I found that apartment building, I don't know, and I looked at that window and I thought, what if I had been a young mother during the war? What would I have done to put food on the table? What would I have done for us to survive? And what if that came back to haunt me 50 years later? So that had always lodged in my heart, and it was just passionate to tell that story.
The story stayed with you. You did tell the story in your first book. And did you know at that point that there's going to be at least 15 more?
No idea. I was so passionate to write this story. It took me 3.5 years. I was in a writing group, taking classes. I sold the book, and my editor said, well, now you have this character, Aimée Leduc, half French, half American, fashionista. She's got this great apartment. What's going to happen? Where is she going next? And I said, what? Yeah, and what about her dog, Muse Davis, the Bichon Frise? And what about that man she met? And she said, you are writing a series, aren't you? And I said,
that had not occurred to you.
No, I said, of course I am, right? Because she was feeding me information.
I certainly am.
What I could do.
You mentioned her dog. We have to digress for a moment. Miles Davis. Miles Davis, if you're reading it in English. It's a great name.
Thank you.
Great name for the dog. And her apartment? Oh my goodness, I want to be her. I want to live in her apartment. Yeah. Tell us, you started, but tell us a little about her character. What drives her?
Well, she inherited this detective agency based on a real detective agency, Duluth Detective, which you might have seen in that Woody Allen film, Midnight in Paris. It's on the Rue du Louvre. It's, you know, you will see it if you're waiting at the bus to go to the Louvre. I saw this detective agency, and I thought, well, if I'm going to write about a detective, maybe I should go talk to one, especially a Parisian one. I went in and met her, and her father had started the agency. And his father, her grandfather started it, and then her father. So she inherited it. And so I shamefully just stole her history and gave it to my detective. But I thought, because I was writing in the 90s, instead of being a criminal detective, and she would have been trained in that, what if she was doing something cutting edge called computer security? Because that was, in 1994, when I started research, there were only 3 companies in the US that did computer security. One was run by a woman, and I got to talk to her and interview her. So that was very cutting edge, at the, you know, in those days, and it's changed a lot. And I thought, well, of course, and I can't write as a French woman because I can't tie my scarf the right way, and we know that is genetic, right? I don't have that gene.
That's ruining my whole day. I thought after we were done, you would at least teach me how to tie the scarf the right way.
I'm impaired, but yes, I do my best. But so I thought maybe she could be half French and half American. And in the detective genre, in that mold, you know, detectives are a bit outside. They're neither fish nor fowl. But she would also have this American mother who left when she was 8 years old, abandoned them. So she's kind of, you know, always searching for family as well. Her father raised her, and he had been a former policeman and then went to the detective agency. So, and I thought, well, she will live where I would like to live.
She'd live where anyone would like to live.
Right, and she will have
Except there's no heat.
Yeah, no heat, no heat. But a few books later, she has got some money and they're trying to redo the apartment. But it's always, you put the hairdryer on and the chandelier blows. You know, it's always like that. But
How much of her is you?
well, she's taller and thinner than I am, and she wears heels, which I can't. But she's probably an alter ego. She does a lot of things that I would like to do. She's often very tactless, as her partner, René Friant, points out. And I've been known to be told I'm a little tactless once in a while, but she does a lot of things I would never do, you know.
Ride a motor scooter.
Oh, I do that.
Oh, you do, in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. Most Americans that travel to Paris would not be familiar with where you're taking us on this journey. You go to some interesting neighborhoods.
Yeah, I hope that it's not the Paris of the beret and baguette. It's, you know, the other side, the darker side of the City of Light, or just off the beaten track. And that's what I discovered when I stayed with my friend, and she took me to the Marais, which was very ungentrified then. I have a friend who lives in Montmartre, but not near Sacré-Cœur, the other side.
Most of us don't know there is another side.
Oh yeah, and it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. People don't go there. And my other friend who lives in Belleville, and I wanted to write about Belleville, and my editor said, "Where's Belleville?" It was before that movie, The Triplets of Belleville. So she was like, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, Edith Piaf, you know, sang in the streets. There's Père Lachaise Cemetery." She goes, "Okay, sounds good." But I was staying there with my friend who is a single mom and taking her daughter to school, paying her gas bill, going to the market and I was seeing this whole other side of people who live there, you know, and what kind of issues they face. And this was at the time there were a lot of North Africans living there. And I was seeing how people kind of coexist because there's a huge market on the boulevard every week. And all the different cultures and the people that live there, and everyone says bonjour, and you know they're talking about this. Did you get those tomatoes? No, it's better over there. And you know, everyone talks to one another, and it's very like a village.
And that's what draws you back all the time.
Yeah.
All your books take place in the 1990s, which is interesting. It's not contemporary, it's not today. It's also not a long time ago. I think that there's a challenge in there to get it just right. How do you make sure that the background is the way it should be?
Well, you nailed it on the head there, Anne. Challenge. It's a challenge. As I've been writing these books, so the first book was published in 1999, so that was only, you know, 1993. And then I just keep writing every few months because I love the seasons. You know, in San Francisco we have, you know, fog. So I like to have a Parisian season and move her life. So the first book is November 93. This book is only 5 years later. It's April 1999, but it's been 15 books. So the challenge is to keep it true to that time. Google was on the horizon. No Facebook, no Twitter. no texting. They had cell phones and computers. And they're paying in francs, which I think is really sexy. I'm sorry, I like it better than the euro. And you can smoke in the cafes, and it feels good. It's kind of like, I don't want to go when we have Facebook and everything, because I think it makes it harder for the crime writer, because you can immediately, communicate with someone. And the challenge is, we are reading it now with 2015 eyes, and we're thinking, that people will say to me, was it really like that then?
It doesn't seem that long ago, but yes, it was. A lot has changed
Exactly.
since 1999.
And if people are much more savvy, I mean, in 1993, my mother didn't know what a server was, but now everybody, it's that kind of, so I need to look at the newspapers of the day. I see what was on sale, I see the weather, I see what strike was going on, because they're always striking.
There's something on strike at all times, so you can't go wrong. You do something that I consider very risky in the later books. And a couple of things. Number one, your main character, who is a single woman, has a baby.
Yeah.
Did you think that was risky when you decided to do that?
Oh yeah, but my editor wanted her to have a baby.
She did?
Yes.
So now she's running around Paris, she's going on her motor scooter, she's solving all kinds of crimes, and the baby needs to be nursed.
That's right, and she's leaking. So can we say that? Can we say that? I mean, those things. So she's going back to work after 6 months maternity leave. She's scared. But she loves to work. She's trying to balance and juggle, and she feels guilty, and yeah.
It is refreshing to have this kind of character.
And then the biological father turns up.
Yes. If you haven't read it, you'll see that's another story in there. I like that she's a mother, and I think it has a lot to do with her own personality, because she didn't really have her own mother when she was growing up. And I know that was obviously intended.
Right.
The other thing that is risky, and this is not new to this book, it's from day one, her business partner, I find the most endearing character, Renee, who is a computer hacker extraordinaire.
Yes.
And a dwarf.
Yes, and a very natty dresser. He wears handmade shirts, and lobe shoes, so he's very fashion conscious.
Where did that come from?
Renee? Well, when I was a preschool teacher in San Francisco, I was on a hiring committee, to hire a new preschool teacher, and there were several of us. And we had many applicants, all with credentials, and one of the applicants was a woman, and she was a dwarf. And she was fully qualified, but I remember thinking, she wasn't much taller than some of our 4-year-olds. And it's very physical work, working, I tell everybody, but, and lifting, and inside my mind, I thought, what if the children laughed at her, didn't listen to her, made fun of her? Okay, I did. I thought that.
But you were not the only one thinking that.
I never once said anything, but we ended up hiring someone else. We voted on someone else, and I never thought much. So 3 months later, I went to our sister preschool for a meeting, and I went early because I heard they had a teacher was doing this great art project, and I was going to, of course, steal ideas, right, and observe the art project. I walked in, I sat down, I was taking notes, and they were all working at this low table, and all the children were wearing smocks, and they were totally engaged and bringing the materials, and they were all so orderly, and I'm like, wow, and where's the teacher? Then I realized the teacher was the woman we didn't hire, wearing a smock, working with the children, and I was like, oh, guilt hit me, and I felt, what was I looking at? I was looking at her disability, not her ability. And what life lessons did those children learn that ours lost out on? And I felt really badly, So maybe I'm assuaging my guilt through the character of Renee.
However, what a wonderful character.
Yeah, he has these skills, but a lot of people don't get past the first look. He's a small person. Do you know what I mean? And especially, Le Petit, they call him and make fun of him. He'd have trouble getting up here. Do you know what I mean? He also has physical, hip dysplasia, so everything's hard for him, But of course, he doesn't want Aimé to see that,
The other character has to be the city of Paris. I don't think your books could be written in any other city.
No, they couldn't. That's why I have to go there and do research.
That is such a shame. And you go for every book.
Yes. Oh, more than once. Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough, Anne.
And what do you do? It is hard. I feel very sorry for you. What do you do specifically? You go and Do you already know where the story is going to take place?
Well, the place has to grab me because, like you say, this place is a character, and it's always murder in. So it's murder in this different quartier of Paris. So for me, it's about getting that place because I have Aimée. She's sort of established now. First of all, where would she go to work on a crime? Why would she be in this district? What is organic about it that would draw her? What is the essence of this place that was a village before? So I go, and I may walk around. I may meet a policeman and something may intrigue me, or something may stick in my mind, and I think, for me to write a book, it takes a year. I'm going to be living in this part of Paris for a year, finding everything out and doing, can I live here for a year? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm at home on the computer, is there enough meat there for me, or can I find that to tell the story?
You do a lot of research, obviously. Do you do what she does? Do you go into the morgue and the sewers you're nodding your head, so you do.
Yep, I do. Because I get this great detail, and that is so important. That makes it real. Things happen by chance. One time I was in Montmartre, and I had written a scene where Amy is escaping through Montmartre. It's the Fabric Martin at Saint-Quentin, and so I had written it one way, and I was like, boy, that's really boring. That's the same old, same old. So I was there at the Fabric Market one day, and it started to rain. And I'm thinking, and I ran under the awning, these old-fashioned material stores. And all the French women had run, no one had an umbrella. So everyone was under these awnings. And I was edged out, of course. And I was edged out around the corner. And around the corner of this fabric store, there was a man sitting in an open van with bolts of fabric. And there was a oval window with a chute, going to the basement where he put the bolts of fabric into the basement of the store. And I was looking at it. And I was going, could I fit in there? I got down and to see if I could fit in this oval. And I said, no, but Amy has 3-inch heels. Could I do it with 3-inch heels, right? So it's like a slide. And the man's going, no, madame, no, c'est interdit. And I'm going, oh, just a minute. But she could fit, and I used it in the book. And I never would have known about it. It was so fresh, and she, escapes through the basement with the fabric. And it was so much more interesting than that's real life.
Of course it is. When you get off the plane in Paris, are you as excited today as you were the first time?
Yes, in different ways. Yes, I am. Because, Paris has changed. Paris is so much more global. And for me to go back in my eyes, in my mind, to how it used to be as well, do you know what I'm saying? Because it's like if you read an Inspector Maigret novel, Georges Simenon, those are the 30s and 40s and so atmospheric. And I will go at night and walk along the Canal Saint-Martin, and there's not a lot of people, and it'll be like a Maigret novel. You get that whiff of that old time. And so I'm always looking for that time from before.
Where did the love for Paris come from, and when did that start?
Well, I've always loved Paris. My father was a Francophile, and he sent me...
it rubbed off.
Yeah, and he sent me to a French Catholic school with nuns, and we learned archaic French.
So you have always spoken French?
It was a very bizarre kind of French, yes. It was from the turn of the century the nuns taught us, actually. But yeah.
Tell me, when you're writing about Amy, do you see her? Do you see her as a living person when you're writing?
I think so. I'm often, when I'm in Paris, I'm at a window of a shop, and I'm thinking, is she going to be, I'm kind of with her, we're shopping. It's kind of, we go shopping together. Are you going to pick that? No, I will pick that, yes. And with this thing at home, and that thing, we'll go to the flea market. So I'm kind of with her in, where she'd park her scooter, how she would go there, in the cafe where she knows someone, from her father's friend. I don't know, it's kind of a universe in my head. It feels very real to me.
What do the French think about your books?
Well, I did a reading in Paris in French.
What was that like?
It was interesting. After I did my reading, nobody threw my book on the floor. So I felt very, vindicated.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, it was a good sign. Yeah, they all like that.
But they like your books. They read your books. They buy your books.
Yeah. Younger people, I think, the younger generation.
As well as in other countries. How many languages are your books in?
Japanese, Italian, the Spanish covers are great. They have, all these, high heels and fashionista fun covers. Oh, Norway and England, because that's another country, right? Britain. There's some more I can't remember, but.
Well, as we said, the books take place in the different neighborhoods, and you know I would butcher it, the arrondissement,
Arrondissement, oui.
and we're up to 15.
Yep.
What happens when you've hit 20?
I don't know. You know, each arrondissement has 4 quartiers too, but
Oh, okay.
but I would be, you know, that's 80 quartiers. I would be in a wheelchair if I kept writing.
Because if you needed any help, I was going to tell you, you could bring her to San Francisco, and she could open a branch there.
She could.
What a wonderful city to live in.
Yes. Well, 2 books ago, Renee came to Silicon Valley, you know, and he was amazed by, you know, what people called coffee. You know? And he was amazed by the freeways. And then Renee had a very interesting and when people brought the food in the diner, he was going, "This is for the table?" And they're going, "No, this is one portion, American style." So it was
Isn't
fun.
that sad? He'd be amazed by what we call chocolate, too.
Yes. Yes.
Tell me about your writing process. Do you write every day?
When I'm a good girl, when I'm not on book tour, yes, but I try and write every day. I just get up and make coffee and take the dog out and start writing.
And do you have a process? Are you fanatical about how you do this? Must it be the same?
When I started writing, my son, you know, again, was in preschool, and I wrote, I mean, my publisher bought my book when he was in 3rd grade, and it came out when he was in 5th grade. So I always kind of go, you know, so I would write when I was in the carpool line. I mean, you know, you write when you can. You know, at the kitchen counter and something, or he took a nap, or when he took lacrosse, it was great. I had a big 2-hour time. I could go and work for 2 hours. I loved when he was in lacrosse, but everybody was getting hurt in lacrosse all the time. Terrible injuries. But anyway, you just make do. But now, of course, I'm at home with the dog, and it's probably harder because I don't have you know, I can work all day to do 3 pages when before.
Or you can find other things to do.
Yes.
Do you know, when you write that first sentence, where this book is going?
I know where we're going to be. I know where Amy's going to be. I know that she's going to have a journey. I know that she's going to have this kind of job, but I'm not sure. And for me, it's very important, and I have an epitaph in the beginning of this book. And when I found the right epitaph, it sort of dictates what the story is about. And this one is, when the road bends, it's hard to walk straight, a gypsy proverb. And when the book was finished, it was like everyone in the story had to face that, every person. And that just sort of, so when I found this sort of, there's wonderful French sayings, and what it means, kind of like the growth of the character and part of their journey. Then I know. I don't outline, if that's what you're asking. I don't outline.
It's amazing to me how many authors do not outline. I always thought that was, you know, you were taught that in writing you must have a cohesive outline.
I wish I could outline. It would make the process easier.
How long does it take you